What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a comedic spin on all the goings-on in the world. My name is Jacob Paveo, and I come to you from the Great White North, soon to be actually white because the snow is coming. And I generally come to you every Tuesday evening, but the last 2 weeks have been a little crazy. We'll get into that in a second. Eastern Standard Time, of course, fresh for download to listen to at work on Wednesday morning for everyone, the entire world around. If it's your first time here, thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for checking it out. If you like it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcasting app. We are expanding. I talked about on the last episode getting us working on Alexa. I'm approved for it, but it's not working, so I don't really know exactly what's happening. I'm still trying to deal with it, but we are now on 2 new platforms. We're on Amazon Podcast and TuneIn, and so there's a few more to come because all these new big platforms are opening up to podcasts, which is awesome, so I'm trying to get out there. So welcome if you're listening on one of those platforms, and if you've been with me for a while, welcome back. Don't forget to share a screenshot of the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram right now. Just take a screenshot and throw it up in your story. Help spread the word of the Laugh to Learn podcast. It's just a screenshot. It's real easy to do. Thank you for everyone who does that each and every week. So, September is crazy. That's where I'm going to start because I missed last week. I was on holidays, and I turned off the alarm settings on my phone. Quite literally did not know Tuesday came and went. So I went back to work on Wednesday, and while I'm sitting there at work, I'm thinking like, wow, it's Wednesday, and I have no idea what's going on in the world. I hadn't been paying attention to news. I didn't have the alarms go off because I set alarms for myself for everything, including when to work on some podcast research and writing and stuff like that. So completely missed it. But then this week, I forgot that yesterday was my brother's birthday. I didn't forget, but I should have known it was Tuesday, and I should have recorded Monday, but I didn't. So when he came over yesterday for his birthday, his socially distanced birthday celebration, there wasn't time to record the podcast, so I'm recording Wednesday morning, but we'll be back to the normal schedule moving forward, assuming nothing else crazy happens in September, but no promises, clearly. So this week, I told you last time that I had a special episode planned, and I did, but we're going to have to put that on hold because this week has to be all about COVID-19 as we see another major increase in cases. I mean, really, I want to answer the questions. What are we going to do about it, and how should we be interpreting this issue moving forward? So you guys know where you are. This right here is the Laugh to Learn podcast. Hey, check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. We are going to start at the top. So by that, I mean the top of the province, the premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, whose brother I was actually talking about last night at my brother's birthday party, Rob Ford, former crack-smoking Toronto mayor who everyone loved. But Doug Ford sat down for or I guess he didn't sit down, he was standing for a press conference just earlier this week. I believe this was all done yesterday afternoon. Sorry, this would have been Sunday afternoon, but I think this is super relevant. So I'm going to read through this. This is from CTV News Toronto. So Ontario Premier Doug Ford has warned the province's surging COVID-19 case count is, quote, cause for concern, end quote, and that another shutdown is not off the table. Ford made comments at Queen's Park on Monday after Ontario saw the largest jump in new COVID-19 cases since early June. Quote, today's numbers, they are cause for concern for all of us, Ford said. Let me be crystal clear. Every option is on the table. We will take every step necessary, including further shutdowns, end quote. Ford said if Ontario was forced into another shutdown, he would look at rolling back parts of the province on a region-by-region basis, adding that there are currently 3 or 4 COVID-19 hotspots in Ontario. Now, Toronto reported the most new cases in the province on Monday, recording 112 cases in 24 hours. Again, this is just this past Monday. Peel region reported 71 new cases, while Ottawa reported 60. All other public health units recorded fewer than 10 new cases, except for York region, which reported 14 new infections. And of course, for those who don't know, York region is on the northern border of Toronto, the actual region, the health board region of Toronto. So they are touching each other. On Monday, there were 15 public health units across the province that reported 0 new infections. Ford said he's begging people across the province to stop attending social gatherings, which have been largely attributed to the spike in cases across the province. Quote, "Folks, these have to stop. They just have to stop, bottom line, and we'll be coming out to discuss that further this week. To be very frank, the majority of people are following the protocols. It only takes a small group, and then it just starts going like wildfire right across the board," end quote, Ford said. Health Minister Christine Elliott, who described Monday's spike in cases as disturbing, said she doesn't want to move Ontario back into Stage 2, but will if necessary. Some of the Stage 2 restrictions include tighter limits on social gatherings and no indoor dining. CTV News Toronto learned last week that the government is putting the final touches on their comprehensive fall preparedness plan to battle a second wave of COVID-19. Government sources said the province will unveil a strategy to deal with a surge in COVID-19 cases, the seasonal flu, and the backlog of surgeries, and expecting to unveil the plan once the details have been finalized. The strategy would include the largest flu vaccination campaign in Ontario's history, as well as funding for hospital capacity, funding to address the surgery backlog, and strengthening the protections around long-term care homes. Elliott said on Monday that the plan will be released in short order. Last week, Ontario announced it is pausing any further steps in the reopening plan due to the recent spike in COVID-19 cases. Health Minister Christine Elliott said the latest trend in numbers have raised some concern, especially as we begin to reopen schools and post-secondary institutions, which we will get to later. Elliott said that based on advice from Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Williams, and the Public Health Measures Table, Ontario will take, quote, a pause of 4 weeks, end quote, before the province considers any further loosening of public health measures or further reopening of businesses, facilities, or organizations. Quote, "We did not make this decision lightly," Elliott said. "We are really concentrating on getting all of our students back to school safely and having them remain healthy. But the reality is that spread in the community will also likely mean spread in the schools. So we need to limit the spread in the community as much as possible," end quote. Elliott said the pausing of restrictions means Ontario won't allow for things like expanded social circles, expanded gathering sizes, and greater increases in the number of people allowed to attend sports events. So once again, that is an article from CTV News Toronto. Now, I just want to talk up front about the political impact of all of these decisions because, of course, they are now vying with the decision of whether or not to reclose the province or portions of the province and what that scaling back looks like. So we are learning now because we kept restaurants closed for so long. We thought restaurants would be a major source of spread because they often are for things like the flu. Now, it could be because of the regulations we have in place where everyone at restaurants is spread out and employees are masked and wearing gloves in the kitchens and sanitizing tables between sittings and whatnot. But there have not been spreads in restaurants. Rather, the spreads have been coming from large social gatherings, specifically birthday parties and weddings. You may recall that towards the end of August, I think it was on August 28th, or the weekend of August 28th, there were 3 different weddings that resulted in over 40 COVID-19 positive tests. So 3 weddings where it spread to just about every single person who attended these weddings. 2 of these 3 weddings were outdoor gatherings, and the maximum outdoor, I think, is 100 people, and indoor is 50 at the point that these weddings took place, for the number of people you could have in a gathering. Now, the really, really frightening thing is, honestly, because 2 of these events were outdoors, we thought that the spread was extremely difficult in outdoor spaced settings. Now, it's totally possible, as someone pointed out to me, that this could have just been a result of people getting drunk at an event and saying screw social distancing and hugging and whatever, right? Totally possible. But politically, from the politician's perspective, the idea was we can allow people to gather outside because it should be safer than reopening malls and reopening restaurants, so we saved that stuff for later. Now, it seems like those more controlled environments, because at a restaurant, if you're acting a fool and getting drunk and dancing up on the girl at the table beside you, the bartender or the server or the manager of the restaurant, they're just going to kick you out. They're going to say, no, you can't act like that, you got to go. The real problem is, if you're at a backyard wedding, no one's going to do that. And that seems to be where a lot of these cases were coming from towards the end of the summer. So it's actually a really frightening perspective, because it's the one thing that the government's been going around telling us it's okay to do, right? Meet with your friends outside, go to a park, go for a walk outside and stay 6 feet away and you'll be fine. Well, now we're seeing that large gatherings outdoors are actually resulting in horrible spikes, resulting in multiple deaths. Like a few different seniors who were attending one wedding in particular, it was actually the indoor wedding, was inside a mosque, and 3 people were in ICU, and I think one of them died, right? So we don't want that sort of thing happening, and it's just really frightening that we thought we had put in place the correct way forward, and clearly it backfired. So people are now being more careful in those sorts of settings, but legally they have yet to scale back allowing it. So, or rather, they continue to allow it. They have yet to scale back those regulations, and I don't know that they can. Honestly, I've talked about this on the show before. I don't think we can go back into a full shutdown because of the impact on the economy, right? So I'm recording my podcast Wednesday morning before work. I work from home now, so I'm literally going to record this, go and start working, and for my lunch break, I'm going to eat lunch and finish editing the podcast and post it, right? Because I work from home, and I can do that. It's easy to work from home for me. Most people, it's not. For most people, they can't work from home, right? The economy, we learned this the hard way. The economy does not move forward when people are stuck at home. You have to provide them with income, or else they can't pay rent, they can't buy food. Everything stops, right? Everything comes to a halt. So it's imperative that we stay open and find the correct way to do so, which is why I think you're going to see maybe some things scaled back, like the number of people you can get with at a social gathering being scaled back, the number of people you can meet with both indoor and outdoor being scaled back, maybe the number of people allowed in a mall or a grocery store, something being scaled back to where we're lining up again outside, which still sometimes happens, but in more larger urban centers, seeing those sorts of restrictions coming back, I can see that happening. And honestly, I think that it might. Now, the next thing that I want to get to is the mask debate. So I just made myself 4 points that I want to get to. So the first one was Doug Ford and the political impact. The next one's the mask debate. So the reason I want to bring this up is there is a woman who was downtown Toronto handing out flyers who's gone really big. They were calling her Karen and everything online. She ended up appearing on Dr. Phil a few days ago, but she's been interviewed on all different news organizations. Ultimately, she was part of a group that was handing out what they called informative pamphlets about how wearing a mask decreases your oxygen level and makes it more difficult to breathe, and there's no evidence that they work. All of it, by all medical standards, is untrue. Like, there's nothing supporting what they were saying. But the reason that I want to bring up the mask debate is because it is very real. There are a lot of people who genuinely believe the masks do nothing. And it can become a real issue, especially when we're talking about having these things scaling back, which has been happening, and then you have large gatherings allowed. You know, I've been in situations where I wear my mask almost always. I always have one with me. And even in my car, I have the disposable ones, and then I have my my reusable one, and I'm trying to find some cooler looking ones because I just have like a plain black one, but I want to get something that's more nifty looking. But I always wear a mask in social situations unless I am spaced out from people. But even still, like, sometimes you're in a situation where like someone is uncomfortable with it, so I'll wear it anyways in those situations, because you just don't know. And I've seen and heard firsthand accounts of circumstances where people are offended that someone is wearing a mask or that someone is telling them they need to wear a mask. The one thing I've seen, I think I talked about it on the show, was at a Shoppers Drug Mart, which is a Canadian pharmacy. I think it's just in Canada. I'm actually not sure about that. But it's a pharmacy chain. And I was walking in behind someone who didn't have a mask on, and when they were asked to put one on, they started making a scene about how they have some health thing, and they were yelling, whatever. And to me, I really don't know how we handle those sorts of people, because there is, like, even someone who is on oxygen, there is, like, with an oxygen hose pumping into their nose, there's literally no research that says they can't wear a mask. It does, like, I've heard people say, like, oh, I have asthma. It doesn't matter, because if you go into a hospital and you're coughing with asthma, you know what they give you? A mask. That's the first thing they give you. So it doesn't make sense that people are making this stuff. I guess maybe it does make sense, but people are making this stuff up and making themselves victims in this situation when, by all accounts, there is a loophole, I guess you could call it, that says that if there is medical reasoning, you don't have to wear a mask. But scouring the internet, I have found no scientifically proven medical reasoning to not wear a mask. It's been quite the opposite, because all of the ailments people talk about, like upper respiratory infections and asthma, COPD, pneumonia, all these things people say, like, oh, bronchitis, I have this, so I can't wear a mask. Well, no. Actually, if you do the research, all of those ailments, if you walk into a hospital and you are coughing with those ailments, the first thing they do is put a mask on you until you're isolated in a room. So it doesn't make sense that they would put a mask on someone and increase their risk of death, because it doesn't increase their risk of death. You're making yourself the victim for, honestly, no apparent reason. So I think personally the mask debate is over. It's done with. If I'm in a situation where someone's like, hey, like, can you put a mask on? For whatever reason, I'm not wearing one or whatever, like, I always put one on. Like, that's, when I'm at work, I have to wear a mask. That's the reason why, actually, I work from home most of the time. It's actually quite annoying to wear a mask all the time. I'll be honest about it. I don't love it, but I do it, and I don't actively avoid wearing a mask. I don't not go somewhere because I have to wear a mask. Like, it just doesn't make sense to have that perspective. So personally, I think the mask debate is a blown out of proportion over exaggeration of people's uncomfortableness with a mask on their face, and they just kind of need to get used to it. Like, you've never ever heard a story of the smartest person in the world who should have been the top brain surgeon but couldn't because they had a medical condition where they couldn't wear a mask. It doesn't exist, right? And you would have heard these stories like, oh, my friend wanted to be a nurse, but she unfortunately has asthma, so she can't wear a mask. No, people with asthma are nurses. Like, what are you talking about? There's literally no discussion to be had, and I wanted to put an end to it, or at least really reiterate that to listeners if anyone was questioning that. Second last thing to get to is the school debate. So I actually forgot, but I have an article here about cases in schools. So, like, right now, we have I only have the results on a daily basis. So 27,664 people had their tests processed for COVID in Ontario on Monday, with 24,339 under investigation at the end of the day. Of those 27,664, another 117 cases were resolved overnight. So roughly 27,800 or 27,900 people every single day they're able to test and process those lab results. At the same time, we are finding now numbers creeping above 300 people every day getting sick, and schools are reopening. So we're able to test a ton more people than we ever were, and those numbers they're saying are going to keep increasing with the number of people we can test every day. But schools are opening. So I just want to quickly go over a summary of COVID cases in schools and then talk about this, because this is, I think, going to possibly be the debate of our generation. And we definitely would have thought it would have been something to do with terrorism or extremism or something, but no, it seems like it's going to be something at home affecting our children, and it might be COVID-19. It ain't transgenderism, it ain't nothing like that. I think it's going to come down to this. So currently, and this is for the province of Ontario, because they are actually posting these numbers. You can, if you just Google schools in Ontario with COVID-19, right on ontario.ca, there's a page called COVID-19 cases, schools, and childcare centers. So it summarizes all of it with actual reported numbers. So currently in Ontario, and this is only for publicly funded schools, there's no information on private schools. Obviously, it's a publicly funded school board. These are cases in publicly funded schools. So all school-related cases, there are a cumulative total of 41. However, yesterday, being Tuesday, September 15th, there were 12 new cases, which means that we jumped from 29 to 41 cases in a day. So this number is climbing. Of those cases, of those 41 cases, 15 are related to students, 18 are related to staff, and 8 are unidentified. In total, there are 35 schools in the province, which is about 0.72% of schools that have reported cases. Now, if we quickly go 100 over 0.72, that's 1 in 139 schools, roughly, in the province that have coronavirus. That's bad. That's bad. Those are not odds. Like, if someone said to you, you can buy this lottery ticket for $1,000, right? $1,000 for a lottery ticket, and your odds are 1 in 139. Hell yeah, I'm taking that ticket every single day of the week for $1,000. Those are high odds, and they're trying to make them look low, but they're not. 1 in 139 schools has the virus, and you also have to remember where these schools are located. They are all located in similar areas. So If you're outside of Ontario and Canada, I apologize for going into this much detail, but the cities they are located in are Ottawa, Pickering, Mississauga, Oakville, Brampton. Orillia has one. That's actually kind of scary. I'm surprised at that. Toronto, Waterloo, Amherstburg, which again is surprising. These are both in more remote areas. That's why they're surprising. And lastly, Markham. So the cases are province-wide in the southern districts of the province. So nowhere up north has it. So when you say, or when I say that 1 in 139 schools have it, you have to remember that no schools north of Ottawa have it. And Ottawa, not that far north. It's about 3 hours to the border, to the U.S. border from Ottawa. Actually, this might even be a little bit closer than that, 2.5, 3 hours. So that's really not that far north. And every single school-related case is Ottawa and south in Ontario. So it's quite frightening when you see those statistics. And I honestly really don't know what the appropriate action to take is, because we all know that kids have to be going to school. They can't be staying home. Parents have to be going to work. Kids have to learn, right? We can't just shut down schools until this is figured out, because we'll have a population of uneducated children, right? During the wartime efforts, we had to try our best to keep kids educated and keep them in school, because you can't fall behind on those sorts of things. The problem is, these numbers have just started. Like a lot of schools, one of my cousins, he's starting school today. He hasn't started until today, right? His school hasn't even opened yet until today. And we're already seeing all these numbers from the few schools that have been open now since last Tuesday. So we haven't even had 2 weeks of school for this stuff to spread. These are all cases that children brought into the school at the beginning of the year, not cases that spread at the school. So I expect these numbers to climb, expect it to get much worse. However, if you have children in school, I respect your decision to send them there, because what else are you supposed to do, right? I think that no matter the age, any child at school should be wearing a mask. Honestly, I don't think there should be, because right now I think grade 3 and under, they don't have to wear a mask in Ontario. I think that's wrong. If you're going to school, you should absolutely be wearing a mask. I know most teachers are wearing a mask and a face shield, but I think the kids should all be wearing a mask all day, no exceptions. If your kid can't wear a mask at school, they shouldn't be attending school, just because like it's the sort of thing now that we just have to do. This kind of goes back to the mask argument, where it's just you have to do it, right? You don't trust random strangers. Just to go back to the mask argument quickly, the big thing that's said against the mask is the virus is a small molecule and it can easily fit between the weaves on a mask. Yes, that's absolutely true. You're correct. But that's the same argument as saying that a jewelry store should not put bars on a window because a necklace is small enough to fit between the bars. Yes, a $5 million necklace can fit through the small bars you put on your jewelry store window. The problem is, the necklace doesn't just get up and walk out. Someone has to break in. So you put bars on the windows that no person can fit between, because the person is what transports the expensive necklace from inside the store to outside, right? The molecules of the virus travel in water droplets, which are bigger and get stuck in the mask, just like a thief would get stuck trying to get through the bars on a window into a jewelry store. That's the way you have to think of this. I came up with that all by myself, by the way. I'm very proud of that analogy. That's the way that you have to think about wearing masks and how important it is. It's still technically possible to get that necklace out of the jewelry store. You can have someone who's super flexible and get through these bars, like a contortionist, or someone who creates a device that can reach out and grab the necklace through the bars on the window. It's possible. But guess what? Far fewer jewelry stores are broken into because they all put bars on the window, and it is much harder for a thief to get through those bars. So think about that when you're thinking about masks, and if someone says to you, the molecules will get through anyways, just remember the jewelry store analogy, okay? So just getting back to schools to wrap up on that, I really think it's important that kids are being educated and being educated properly, and that parents have the ability to get away from their kids for a second, because they've all been locked together in the same house for 6 months, right? That's a whole lot of time. But I think we have to find a safer way to do it. Kids all should be forced. They should have to wear masks at school right now, no matter their age. And we need to really work on something moving forward where kids are safer, because it's already spreading in schools, and if we don't change something, it's going to continue. I honestly don't know what that answer is. I really don't. But it has to be sorted out. It absolutely has to be sorted out. Currently, the school district that I live in, what they're doing is you have to fill out a sheet every day for your child where you take their temperature, and then you fill out a questionnaire like, are they feeling sick? Do they have a headache? Do they blah, 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 right? It's not a very long thing. You just fill out the kid's name, the school they attend, and then you answer like 4 questions. And if they, don't have a fever, haven't felt sick, and whatever, then they're good to go. Well, you really think most parents are taking their kid's temperature every single morning? Because I don't. I think that most parents know what temperature their kid is supposed to be, and they write it every day, and they'll change it by a few decimal points. That's what I think is happening. You need a foolproof system. You need a system that is going to actually work and actually catch these things, because COVID, it does spread by people who genuinely are doing their best and doing all they can to stop the spread. But things like this spread most by people who are suffering. Someone who can't take 2 weeks off work because their kid has a fever. Even if their kid doesn't have COVID, right? They can't take 2 weeks off work because their kid's a little sick. They have to continue to send their kids to school, or they can't pay their rent. That parent is every single day of the week going to lie on that form. You need something that can catch those concerns and catch those issues. But I really don't know what that is. Which brings me to my last point. Coming off of school debates is workplace safety. So starting in schools, teachers have to deal with roomfuls of children right now who, let's be honest, kids do not know how to properly social distance and do not know how to keep themselves and their hands clean, and they're not good at those things. And teachers are at the highest risk now. In the U.S., I think there's been 21 teachers who contracted COVID and have died from it. We, of course, can't be certain that they contracted COVID at work because we don't know. But these were educators who, while they were working in schools, contracted COVID and have since died in this school year. So and the American school year, just to be clear for those who maybe live elsewhere, starts a little bit before the Canadian. So a lot of them start in August. That's why now at September 16th, a lot of them have been in school for more than a month. In Canada, school starts, or at least here in Ontario, most of Canada, it starts at the beginning of September. So when it comes to workplace safety, like, you have people like teachers who have to work with kids because that's what their job is, and they have to interact with children every single day, and they are putting themselves at significant risk. And I don't think anyone has an answer for how to protect those people. I really don't. Further to that, there are a lot of companies I know of. Luckily, I work for a company that is really pushing for social distancing, and even when you're in office, people stay away from each other when they're having discussions and whatnot, and they've been really good about it. I know a lot of people who work at companies that are forcing everyone back. Now they're basically saying your kids are back in school, there's no reason for you to be home, so it's time to get back to work. And that's not the solution. In fact, that's how people are going to get sick and die, right? If you're forcing them back into an unaltered office space, which a lot are. So there are currently no legal requirements for what you have to do in an office space, and that needs to be looked at, right? It absolutely needs to be looked at. The height of dividers that need to be up and the materials they are made of between people. Like open desks right now are still a thing at a lot of companies. I have friends who are going to work every day working at a communal desk space. So you go in and you take whatever desk is available, and it's just an open block of desks with like 30 people sitting at them who all have nothing between each other. That's a legitimate thing that's going on right now, and it has to stop. Those sorts of workplace safety measures have to be legally required so that these companies take the next step, because currently they are not protecting their employees efficiently. I don't really have much else to say. I'm hoping that this second wave, which is clearly coming on right now, I really hope that it's nothing like the first wave. I hope we don't see another 100,000 people in the U.S. die. I hope we don't see tens of thousands of people in Canada getting sick and dying. I hope that it's not the prediction that it will be worse than the first wave was. And I hope everyone listening remains safe and doesn't forget that COVID is still the major concern of the world, the major thing you should be concerned about. You should not stop thinking about it, no matter how easy it is to be complacent, especially if you live in an area like I do, where there's really not many cases here. But it could change in one day, right? And it can change while you don't know there's all these cases around you, because it takes 2 weeks for us to know, right? A week and a half or so, for us to know that there are a bunch of sick people around us. And in that time, you too can get sick. So we all need to be on our guard, as vigilant as possible, making sure our kids remain safe, making sure we remain safe, our families. It is of vital importance to not forget that COVID is still a major active threat. Thank you all for taking the time to listen and stick with me to the end. I encourage you, as always, to take these discussions out with your friends and family in person or over there on social media. I lost what I was saying for a second, so that sounded strange. Please, if you haven't yet, don't forget to take a screenshot of the podcast playing on your phone on whatever app you happen to be listening to and share it on your story, either on Instagram or on Facebook. Of course, you can also post it over on Twitter and let everyone know what you were listening to. Until next time, friends, keep wearing your masks, keep social distancing, keep on sanitizing, keep on staying within your small bubbles, keep working from home, keep working from far, keep on laughing, and keep on learning.